have you ever just looked at a plant and wondered, what's going on in there? I mean, maybe not a mind in the way we think of it, but what about a sensory world? Well, today we're diving into the incredible hidden lives of plants, and I think you're going to be surprised to find out they are aware of a whole lot more than you might think.
So let me just ask you this. Imagine, for your entire life, you were completely stuck in one spot. You couldn't run from danger, you couldn't walk over to find food, you couldn't even duck for cover. How on earth would you survive? Because really, that is the fundamental challenge a plant faces every single day.
So, to solve this little being immobile problem, plants took a totally different path in evolution. Instead of developing muscles to move, they developed senses, an unbelievably sophisticated awareness that lets them perceive and react to, well, everything that's happening around them.
Let's start with a sense that we can kind of wrap our heads around: touch. Now sure, all plants can feel things like the wind or maybe an animal brushing past. But some plants, they have turned this sense into an absolutely masterful tool for survival. And when you talk about touch in the plant world, there are two superstars that just steal the show. You've got the famous Venus flytrap on the left and the beautiful but deadly sundew on the right. These plants don't just feel, they react with a speed and precision that is just, wow. They have to, because for them, a single touch could mean catching their next meal.
What's so wild is the intelligence behind this whole mechanism. You can think of it like a two-step verification system. See, an insect has to brush against not one, but two of its tiny trigger hairs in just a few seconds. This is super smart, because it stops the plant from snapping shut for no reason, like a falling raindrop. But once that condition is met, an electrical signal, yep, you heard that right, electrical, fires across the leaves and the trap slams shut in less than 1/10 of a second.
And here's where it gets really mind-blowing. This process is shockingly similar to our very own sense of touch. When you touch something, it generates an electrical current through your nerve cells. The Venus flytrap is doing basically the exact same thing, just with its own kind of specialized cells. And it goes even deeper. At the cellular level, we both use incredibly similar proteins to detect that pressure in the first place.
Another amazing example is the sensitive plant. If you've ever seen one, you barely touch its leaves and they just instantly fold up. This time, it's not electrical, it's hydraulic. The plant basically pumps water out of certain cells at lightning speed, causing them to deflate and collapse. It's a pretty clever way to look less tasty to any hungry animal that might be passing by.
All right, so we've established that plants can feel, but their awareness goes from the physical to something a little more ethereal. If plants can feel, could they also see? Well, not with eyes like we have, but they have a sense of sight that, in some ways, is way more advanced than ours.
So how do they do it? They use something called photoreceptors, and plants are absolutely covered in them. You can think of them like millions of microscopic eyes scattered all over their leaves and stems, and each one is constantly gathering data about the light all around them.
And what are they seeing with all these eyes? Well, they see which colors of light are available. They're looking for that blue and red light they need for photosynthesis. They can see ultraviolet light, which tells them to produce their own kind of sunscreen for protection. They can even sense infrared light, which lets them know if another plant is starting to grow over them and steal their sun. They know exactly where the light is coming from, and maybe most incredible of all, they can tell how long the day is.
Right, that ability to measure daylight, it gives plants their very own internal clock. It's how a plant knows when it's time to flower, when it should drop its leaves for the winter, or when it's safe to sprout in the spring. They're perfectly in sync with the rhythm of the seasons, all because they can see the light.
Okay, so plants can feel, and plants can see. But they also communicate in a language that's totally invisible to us. It's a complex language of chemicals, and this is where we get into their sense of smell and taste. And it all kicks off with this wild idea. Can you imagine a plant literally smelling danger on the wind and then warning its neighbors? It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, but it is happening in forests and gardens all over the world right now.
So picture this. An insect starts chewing on a leaf. That plant, under attack, releases specific chemicals into the air. It's basically a silent scream for help. Other plants nearby can actually smell these chemicals, and even if they aren't being attacked themselves, they'll get the message and start pumping up their own defenses, just in case. It's like a community-wide alarm system.
And this chemical chat can get even more personal. Research has shown that plants can recognize their own family. When they're growing next to their siblings, they actually share resources through their root systems and compete less. But if you plant them next to a total stranger, it's game on. They'll fight aggressively for every drop of water and nutrient. And they know who's who by sending these little chemical messages through the soil. And speaking of roots, that's where we find a plant's sense of taste. The very tips of their roots are constantly sampling the soil, tasting for the chemical signatures of good stuff, like nitrogen and phosphorus. The roots will physically grow toward those nutritious spots and actively steer away from toxins. They're literally foraging for food without ever taking a single step.
All right, our final section. Here we're wading into the most controversial, most cutting-edge part of plant senses, their possible reaction to sound.
Now, I have to be clear, this is a very new field of science. We definitely do not have all the answers yet. But the early clues suggest that plants aren't totally deaf to the world. They seem to be really sensitive to vibrations, which of course is exactly what sound is.
And the little clues we're finding are just fascinating. Like, some studies found that corn roots will actually grow toward a sound playing at a specific frequency. Scientists have even recorded trees under drought stress making these ultrasonic clicking sounds, maybe a cry for help. And then you have the amazing dancing plant, which you can actually see moving its little leaves in response to music.
So when you put it all together, touch, sight, smell, taste, and maybe even hearing, it really forces you to completely rethink what it even means to be a plant.
Look, they don't have brains or a central nervous system, so they don't think like we do. Let's be clear about that. But they are absolutely not just these passive green things. They are dynamic, living organisms, experiencing a rich sensory life through a kind of decentralized intelligence that's spread throughout every single leaf, stem, and root. When it comes down to it, from the lightning-fast trap of a fly trap, to seeing light we can't see, to sending chemical warnings to their neighbors, plants show this deep, profound awareness. They're constantly solving problems, constantly connected to their environment in ways we are only just beginning to understand.
And all of that leaves us with one final question to think about. The next time you walk through a forest, or even just look at a houseplant on your windowsill, knowing that it's aware of its world and aware of you, how does that change the way you see it?